Okay, we're back. And it's been a while, so we're going to do a quick review. I always say that, and then we end up like spending all the time reviewing, but hopefully this is actually quick. Okay, so we're going to go from the top. So Baruch Atah Hashem. So Baruch means that Hashem is the source of all bracha, and that we become worthy of his bracha by recognizing that fact, because Hashgacha Pratis works in accordance with your knowledge of it. Hashgacha Klalis also, if you understand what that means, but not in the same way. And so when we're not giving blessing to God, we're acknowledging that he is the source of blessings. That's Baruch. Atah. So we explain that there's a trend in brachos and in certain Pragma of Tehillim as well of changing back and forth between second person and third person. So we gave 4 ideas, or really one idea with 3 subdivisions. The basic idea is that there are dangers or harms or distortions in feeling overly close to Hashem, and there is a different set of dangers and harms and distortions of feeling distant from him. So we switch back and forth to either, you could say, positively to partake of the advantages of both, or to avoid the disadvantages of both. Okay, and then we said 3 particular ideas from the Rishonim. The Rashba says that when you use the second person, you're speaking to God as though he's there, as though he's like right in front of you. So you should bring to mind the idea that it is or should be evident that Hashem exists, but then you should recognize that you know nothing about his essence. Lo ya'ani adam v'chai, and so that's the third person. Rabbeinu Bachya says that you use the second person to emphasize the way that knowledge of God is accessible to us, which is through his actions. But then you switch to third person to remind yourself that you know nothing about his essence. And then the Machzor Vitri puts this in terms of Yiras Hashem, in terms of the analogy of a king, which is that on the one hand, the king is so awesome, terrifying, etc., and revered that you aren't even allowed access to him. That is speaking to God in the third person as though the only way you can access him is through a messenger. But then you use the second person to feel the fear of Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid, of being in God's presence. And those are both types of Yiras Hashem. So that's Atah. And then Hashem, we defined Hashem. I gave my one sentence definition that is culled from the Rambam, which is the one independent existence who is non-physical and eternal. And we noted that seems to be a machlokus between the Rambam and the Tur about how the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei references Hashem. So the Tur says it comes from the shoresh of Hey Yud Hey Haya, existence, because God is the true existence, the ultimate existence, the independent existence, and we should have in mind Haya Hovev Yihyeh. Whereas the Rambam says that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei shares no etymology with any other word. And maybe if we understood Hebrew more, we would see that the name points to God's essence and as a necessary existence. And so we asked, well, why does the Rambam not just say it's Haya? And we answered speculatively that Rambam can't say, or not Rambam can't say, but Rambam doesn't want to say that Hashem shares any shorts with anything else, because Hashem is completely unlike anyone else, or anything else. So to use the same shorts as existence would imply that there's some commonality between Hashem's existence and the existence of everything else. So we want to avoid that, or not we. Hashem wants to avoid that, I guess, by having what we call it there's common nouns, proper nouns, and super proper nouns that only apply to Hashem and nothing else, and that's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And then we said that when we pronounce Yud-Kei Vav-Kei as Aleph Daled Nun Yud, my Lord or my Master, we're acknowledging that we cannot know God's essence, which is represented by Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, but we can know him through his mastery or his lordship. That's Aleph Daled Nun Yud. And the Vilna Gaon also said that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is God's unknowable essence. By the way, I'm doing this speedy review for just context, but if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Okay, this is just review part. Okay, then we went to Elokeinu, and I did not quote a source for this particular interpretation of Elokeinu. I think that there's just only 2 categorical ways we can interpret the possessive in relation to God. Either Hashem is our God refers to how he relates to us, or how we relate to him. So if it's how he relates to us, then it's talking about Hashgacha Pratis, specifically on the Avos and their descendants, that's a unique relationship from God to us. Or if it's talking about how we relate to God, it's talking about how right now we are the only nation that properly recognizes and serves him. And one day, like Rashi quotes from Chazal on Shema, Hashem Shehu Elokeinu Ata, God, Hashem, who is our God now, will one day be God of all of humanity, meaning that everyone will recognize Hashem in the time of Mashiach. So Elokeinu is referring to that exclusivity of relationship here. Then Velokei Avosenu, so that is bridging the gap between us and the Avos, and showing that we have a continuity in the claim, and it's also a setup for the next idea, which is that Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. So why do you say Elokei for each one? Because you don't want to. We can't think that Avraham discovered Hashem on his own, and then Yitzchak just blindly accepted what his father said, and Yaakov just blindly accepted that. Rather, each of them, Yitzchak and Yaakov, both investigated with their own mind, and arrived at the same conclusion as Abraham. And that's why we say Elokei Avosenu, that it's the same God that we all worship, but each of them, so to speak, arrived at the idea firsthand. Okay, even though Yitzchak and Yaakov did have a starting point. Then Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, Hanora, we had three general interpretations. We had the Eitz Yosef, which was associating those three terms with three of the midos, that Abraham recognized God's greatness. That was his hallmark, his main contribution, which was recognizing Hashem on his own. Yitzchak recognized Hashem's gevura in the Akedah, which was demonstrating God's absolute justice and how everything is absolutely dependent on God's will. And if human beings go against God's will, then we don't have the right to exist, strictly speaking. It's only because of God's chesed that we are kept alive. And then Nora, Yaakov recognizes awesomeness, which is I think we said there, the relationship between Hashem and existence in the vision of the angels. And we recognize basically that each of these, the Avos, even though they had the same conclusion, they each had their own relationship to Hashem or their own contribution to Yedias Hashem in the world. That was one idea. Abu Dharam's idea was that Gadol Gibor Venora is referring to the three levels of existence. So in Aristotelian terms, the angels, the spheres, and the earth. And then in modern terms, we would say the chokhmah behind nature, the forces of nature themselves, and then the effects of nature. And Hashem reigns over all of them. He says God is Hakel Hagadol Gibor Venora, and Kel Elyon, he reigns over all of them. And so that's that idea that the universe operates exclusively based on Hashem's will, no other causes. And then Sforno's idea, which is the one I choose to have in mind when I say Shemona Esrei, because it's the most accessible. Gadol is that Hashem is greater than all other existences. That refers to Hashem's uniqueness and the fact that everything is dependent on Him. His uniqueness, His oneness. Gibor is that Hashem sustains the entire world with His strength, which is both the idea of God as the independent existence and Hashgacha Klalis, which is how God sustains the universe. And then Nora is Hashgacha Pratis, specifically reward and punishment, because that causes us to be to revere Him. So that is God, His Hashgacha Klalis and Hashgacha Pratis. Kel Elyon is, according to the Ramban, according to me, first of all, I forgot to write this in here. So my original idea, which again, I don't remember the source of this, is the transcendent God, transcendent God, who is above and removed from all existences. Okay. And I also want to acknowledge the Abu Dharam's idea, which I quoted above, which is that God reigns over all three levels of the universe. And then you have the Ramban's idea, which is the supreme power. Kel means power, Elyon means supreme. So the supreme power, who is the source of all power, or the way I said it is the power that powers the powers. I think that's the fun way to say it. Okay. So then that was what we did up until last time. And then last time, the new idea we did is Gomel Chasadim Tovim. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not going to review the sources because then we're going to be here all day. So I had two interpretations, the Rambam's, which was general, and then the was it the Abu Dharam was specific. I do need to check this because I have to say B'Shem Omra, otherwise I'm gonna not bring Gula to the world. Kal Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim. Yeah, Abu Dharam. Yeah. Okay. So oh, sorry. I don't understand. Actually, there's also Mishlei. Okay. So which I don't know if we went over this, but basically the idea I got from Mishlei is that human kindness is deficient because we have limited knowledge of the recipient and their needs. But Hashem's kindness, chesed, is always tov, because he is omniscient and omnipotent. Okay, so that's why chasadim tovim, because that's the question, is like, how can you have bad chesed? So answers, we can have bad chesed. Rambam says the idea is that chesed equals excess good, which he says is either good that is not owed or beyond what you owe. And then he says everything Hashem does is chesed, because he created the universe out of nothing, and no one has any claim on him. So by definition, everything is chesed. Whereas the Abu Dharam says that this is referring specifically to the hashgacha pratis on the Avos, which you know what, hold on, this is so long ago. Even though theoretically I say this every day, but I I don't remember the particulars about how I presented it here. I just want to make sure I'm consistent here. So I'm cheating by looking at what I said for the 12th graders. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. It was referring to the chesed in the past, present, and future. Sorry. The chesed on Klal Yisrael, in the past, present, and future, which was beyond what we deserve. Okay. And it's beyond what we deserve in two ways. A, because Hashem, treated the Avos, or I guess Hashem had a special, had a special relationship with the Avos beyond other humans. And then the other reason why this is beyond what we deserve is we have historically been bad and not deserved Hashem's kindness. Yeah. Okay, so that is the end of our review. Any questions or additional thoughts that you want to bring up on everything up until now? Okay, that's the quickest review we've done, 12 minutes. Okay, not half an hour this time. Okay, so
I'm sorry. I did have a question. It just took me forever to get to the button. So I just wanted to ask just about Gadol Gibor Venora.
Yeah.
I've always had in my mind like some kind of idea that Gadol and Gibor are, I mean, everything we have, obviously there are no positive ideas, but we have like some kind of, understanding of what these terms mean that are, I always felt like Gadol and Gibor a little bit more referred to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Nora was a little bit more a reaction.
Yeah, I hear that.
Did I make that up, or is that, I thought I got it from every
I have the same intuition, and I think it is in the words, right? I mean, you could not have, like, I think by definition, like, you need someone to be in awe in order to be awesome, I think. Like, for example, I don't think we would call Hashem Nora if there were no humans, but we still would call him Gadol and Gibor.
Right. That's what I was asking. And right. I kind of try, like, to the extent that I'm focusing on this, I try and like get some kind of concept that like makes me shudder.
Yeah,
like
right.
my own smallness in relation to those ideas. But is that,
I mean, I think that's why that's one of the many reasons I like Sforno's idea, because Nora is, like, you could think about Gadol and Gibor of God's uniqueness and independent existence, and you could keep that at arm's length and just think about that as like, God the creator, or like you could have a deistic conception of God, and really just have God has nothing to do with me particularly. But once you say Nora and you're talking about hashgacha pratis and specifically reward and punishment, so now that should have a reaction of yira from us. So I think that is a realistic, true.
Is that appropriate in Tefilah?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, is we should be in a state of Yiras Hashem, I think, in Tefilah. I mean, I think if you had to pick which one is more appropriate for Tefilah, Yiras Hashem or Avos Hashem, I think Yiras Hashem is the more appropriate one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's good. Okay. So let's. I know we started Konei HaKol last time, but because it's been so long, let's just start our analysis again, because we didn't do Ein Mefarshim last time. Okay. So Konei HaKol. So the literal translation is, so I mean, I think the most accurate translation, as we'll see, is who creates all. Okay, but literally it's who acquires all or who owns all, which again is kind of loose because really acquires is the better one. You can see here in the BDB dictionary that it means to get or acquire. Related to other terms mean to acquire or procure. I have not verified this, but I'm pretty sure that purchase was a later usage of it, and I'm just imagining that because this is an assumption on my part, but I'm pretty sure that I don't think this is a controversial statement. I'm pretty sure that the barter system predated money. So like people acquire things through just exchange of ownership before they were exchanging money. So I think purchase probably came later. But kone is also used, I think, more in rabbinic Hebrew for purchase. And I think in biblical Hebrew, like lokeach, I think. I don't know for sure, but but yeah, so who creates all or who acquires all. Okay. So the phrase comes from Malki Tzedek. Okay, and the context of Malki Tzedek here is this is chapter 14 of Beraishis. Psukim 1 through 17 in chapter 14 are about the war with the kings, and Abraham goes and saves Lot and defeats all these powerful kings. And then it says, Umalki Tzedek Melech Shalem Hoti Lechem Vayayin, Malki Tzedek, the king of Shalem, who Chazal say is Shem ben Noach, but plain pshat is that this is a non-Jewish king. Okay, plain pshat. I know Chazal have their theory of identification where they always try to, or the conservation of biblical characters, where they try to like say that so-and-so is really so-and-so and so-and-so is really so-and-so, not something to take literally except in certain cases. And he was a priest to Kel Elyon. Vayvarchehu vayamar. He blessed him. He blessed Avram and said, Baruch Avram le'el Elyon konei shemayim va'aretz. Blessed be Avram to Kel Elyon, creator of heaven and earth. Ubaruch el Elyon asher migin tzarecha biadacha v'yitin lo maser mikol. And blessed be Kel Elyon, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him, Avram gave him a tenth of all. Okay, so I know we asked questions last time, but let's just go over questions again. So what are the questions here? Yeah, Tamar?
I mean, just generally, like, what was Melchizedek's like deal? Like, what did he believe, and how did it relate to what Abraham believed?
Yeah. Okay. So one question is, what was what did Melchizedek mean by Konei Shemayim Va'aretz? And the reason why this is a pertinent question is, according to Pshat, and I forgot if I said this last time, according to Pshat, Melchizedek was an idolater, okay? Because, I mean, just think about the basic plot line of Abraham. Abraham, in his region, discovered Hashem on his own and went around teaching this to everyone, but it does not seem like Melchizedek was a former student of Abraham. And yeah, if you say that Melchizedek is Shem ben Noach, then he knows about Hashem. But presumably everything that Melchizedek is saying about Hashem is just from encountering what just happened with Abraham. So the question here is like, and by the way, remember that this is also the source of the phrase Kel Elyon. So presumably Melchizedek was an idolater, and when he said Kel Elyon, he was talking about Hashem, but as the most powerful of the gods, okay, not as the only God. All right. So the question is like, if his idea of Hashem wasn't complete, why are we incorporating this into our Shevach? And by the way, you see that even Avram, I think Rambam points this out, even Avram corrects him, but not here. Let me look at the Psukim. I think, and I might as well verify that this is really Ramban also. Okay, so after it says, wait a minute, or is it here? Let me just look at the Ramban. Konei Shemayim Va'aretz. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, here it is. Right. So in other words, so Malki Tzedek just says Baruch, where did it go? Yeah, so he's going to El Elyon, I'm going to say, because I think that is plain pshas. It was another god. But then actually, this is a big question now. He already was Kohen le El Elyon. Yeah, it's confusing, right? And then he says Baruch Avram to Kel Elyon. But here's the point I wanted to make: is that in 22, Avram responds to. It says in 21, Vayomer Melech Sodom El Avram Tenli Hanefesh Varuchush Kachlach. The king of Sodom said to Avram, "Give me the soul. Okay, give me the people, but the possessions take for yourself." And then Avram says, "Vayomer Avram El Melech Sodom Harimos Yadi El Hashem Kel Elyon Konei Shemayim Va'aretz." So Avram inserts Hashem into Malki Tzedek's reference, right? So I'm going to just incorporate this into our question here. So it even seems like Avram had to add Hashem to Kel Elyon Konei Shemayim Va'aretz, because Malki Tzedek didn't mention Hashem. Yeah. So the main question is I'm gonna phrase this as like a generic question here. Is like, what do we make of the fact that this is an appropriated name from someone who presumably wasn't exclusively a Hashem worshiper? Yeah, that's what. Tomorrow, I kind of took your question and ran. Am I capturing what you were asking, or are you asking something different?
Yeah, no, I mean a bigger thing that included what I said.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, other questions?
Wait, sorry, we're asking questions on how Kel Elyon from this section relates in the Tefilah, or what exactly?
No, we're asking about what Konei Kol means, or we're analyzing Konei Kol. Yeah, Tamar?
I think I asked this question last time, but why use the word Konei specifically?
Yeah. So what is the mashal of Konei, right? And I'm going to add to this, and I don't know if we made this a separate question last time, but if we mean creator. By the way, how do we know that Konei means creator? What's the first instance in Chumash where we see that Konei means creator? I don't think I said this last time. And actually, I guess this is debatable, so maybe this is not the clearest proof. So Cain's name of Ha'adam Yadas Chava Ishto Vatar Vatelev Es Cain Vatomer Kanisi Ish Es Hashem. So the man knew Chava, his wife, and she conceived, and she bore Cain and said, Kanisi Ish Es Hashem. So let me just look at the Onkelos here. I actually don't know what Onkelos says. Oh, he says just Kanesi Guvra. Does Rashi say? Kanisi. I'm trying to see someone who just gives the pshat. Yeah, because so Rashi does say here, I created a man with Hashem, im Hashem, so as Hashem means with Hashem. Kishabara osiv es ishi bilvado bara anu, val bezeh anu shutvim imo. So when God created me and my husband, he created us alone, meaning God was the only partner and was the only one who created. Val bezeh, but with this anu shutvim imo, we are partners with him in Bria. So Rashi is saying it's Bria here. Let's see what Nima Novetsky says. I've acquired, alternatively created, as per the word's usage in Berashit 14:19. That's what we're doing, and Devarim 32:6. Let's just check this out for 1 second here. Radak has his dictionary, and Radak says, oh, that's interesting. He says, oh, Kana. I don't know why it took me there. Kanishi is as Hashem. I just want to see if he says overtly. Okay, this is too long for me to go through right now to be thorough. Okay, anyway, yeah. So if we mean creator, so why not use a normal word for creation, like, bore, yotzer, ose, hakol, right? And then furthermore, kone is problematic. Okay, what would you say is problematic about it? Say God acquires. Yeah, Nava?
Does it imply that he needs something?
You could say it implies he needs something. I don't know if it inherently implies that, because you could just say that he acquires it, doesn't need it. I don't know. I mean, you could say that. I think there's a more problematic thing. What needs to exist in order for you to acquire something? Yeah, Esty?
Like prior ownership.
Yeah, right. Is that it implies that someone else owned it beforehand, seemingly, right? I mean, that's just in normal cases of kone, it implies that someone else owned it. Yeah, Esty?
Hi, I'm also on with my mom. I was just
sure.
gonna also say that everything is his. So
Right. That's another thing also,
why?
right? Plus, everything is already his. So at what moment did he acquire, at what time were things not his such that he could be described as acquiring? Okay, I'm going to close my window because it's like there is a yelling competition with little kids outside. Okay, much better. All right. I feel like these are the main questions. No, there's at least one more, if not more. Let me go. Yeah, tomorrow. I'm gonna just go scroll to
This
the
is
content.
kind of like a general question, but like, how does this fit in with everything else we were talking about? With everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I don't have a copy of the bracha here. Just give me 1 second here. Where can I pull this from? How about? Hold on. What am I up to here? No left. Ignore the colors. Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask tomorrow's question also, but I want to ask it in a specific way. Okay. Which is, so here is our, where are we? Konei Kol, right? So I feel like it's not just how does this fit in, which would be like a she'ela. I feel like there's a slight problem with the flow. What would you say the problem is here? Yeah, Esty?
I think chronologically,
Yeah.
it would seem that Hashem should be Kona Kol first and then be Gomel Chasadim Tovim.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like it is strange to reference God bestowing kindness and then refer to him as the creator. It really should be the other way around. And so that's one way to ask the question. Another way to ask it is if you look at the bracha, let's do a little color coding game here, which is I'm going to use different colors. Okay. So let's do in blue anything that is an idea about, like a universal idea about Hashem. Okay. And then in yellow, everything that is a particular idea about Hashem relating to particular individuals. So you've got Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Oseinu. Sorry, Baruch atah Hashem. Okay. Hashem is the source of blessing. Great. Okay. Then we switch to Elokeinu Elokei Oseinu Elokei Abraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov. Right. Which is about his relationship with us and the Avos. Then we switch back to Kel Gadol Gibor Vanora, which, unless you're the H. Yosef, then this is also a universal idea. And Kel Elyon as well is also a universal idea about Hashem. Then we go back to Gomel Chasadim Tovim, according to the Abudaran at least. According to the Rambam, then this is still a universal idea. So that's Gomel Chasadim Tovim about Klal Yisrael. Then Konei HaKol, I'm going to do this in green to show that this could go either way right now. Then Zocher chasdei Avos, Umevi goal livnei v'nehem l'man shemo bi'ava, and then presumably the rest of the bracha is about the Avos particularly. Okay, so like the question is, either way. So you could ask it in Esti's way, which is that Konei Kol seems to be the premise of Gomel Chasadim Tovim. Especially if you're going with the Rambam's idea of Gomel Chasadim Tovim being referring to the creation of the universe. And then either way, it's just weird that we just keep switching back and forth. Okay, so that is tomorrow's question, but I just wanted to acknowledge those parts of it. So the question is, I'm going to put this as the second question. How does this fit into the flow of the bracha? Okay, first of all, Hashem, Konei Hakol seems to be the premise of Gomel Chasadim Tovim. So it should come first. Second, why go back to the universal perspective here when the prior phrase and the rest of the bracha, at least according to the Abu Dharam, is about Hashem's relationship with the Avos? Yeah. Okay. So those are the questions. I think those are the main. Oh, there's one more question also. Okay. Is this question clear, or any other thoughts on this question? Okay. The other thing, which I forgot if I said last time, is if you look at our version, we say Konei Hakol. Okay. And if you look at the Sadiq own version, he also says Konei Hakol. And if you look at the Rambam's version, he says Konei Hakol. But then if you look at the oldest version that we have of the Siddur, which is from Eretz Yisrael in the 7th or 8th centuries, we say Konei Shemayim Ba'aretz. Okay. Now, ordinarily, just because the old version says it does not necessarily mean it's more authentic. But here, what argument could you make for saying that this old version is more authentic?
Matches the pasuk.
Yeah, it's directly from the pasuk, right? We know that all phrases in Tefilah come from the pasuk, and the pasuk says Konei Shemayim Ba'aretz. So the question is why, or I guess what do we make of the fact that our version and most versions of this bracha say Konei Shemayim Ba'aretz? Okay, presumably that's the original version, since it's the exact lashon hapasuk. Okay, all right. So those are our 4 questions here. Okay, so last time I asked you what you thought on your own, so I'm not going to ask that now, even though you're certainly free to share your own thoughts as we go. But I do want to make sure we finish analyzing this today. Okay, so the first idea is it's really from Rabbeinu Bachya ibn Pakuda, but I could not find this in the Bachya ibn Pakuda. So the Eitz Yosef is the one who quotes it. He says, "V'konei hakol berov chasadav," through his abundant kindnesses. So he links this to, I guess he really is linking this before and after, right? Because before we say Gomel Chasadim Tovim, and then afterwards we also mention Chesed, Zocher chasdei Avos, which we're not going to analyze today. So he acquires everything in his abundant kindness. Kama amar Rabbeinu Bachya b'chvos halavavos, just like Rabbeinu Bachya says, Ha'im hisbar etzlecha she'es kol hatovos habore uknuya berov chasadav ve'otem tuvosav. Has it become clear to you, this is a rhetorical question, that all the benefits come from the Creator and are acquired by you? Knuya means acquired, but implication is by you, through his abundant kindness and the magnitude of his goodness. Okay, so that's all we got. Okay, so what is he saying here? And this is at least an answer to question number 1. Hold on just 1 second here. So this is we're just gonna call this Rabbeinu Bachya. Rabbeinu Bachya's answer to question 1. And question 1 being, I'm gonna copy and paste this into the chat. Is it gonna fit? Nope, never fits. Hold on. There's 1 and 2. And here is changing the numbers. 3 and 4. Yeah. Okay. So so which what is, and I'll put the Rinabaki in there also as well. So I think he is at least answering question number 1, which is what's the idea of Konei HaKol here, or what idea should we have in mind? I'm not 100% sure I know the answer, by the way, so I'm just going to go with speculation. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I think. I'll type it out afterwards, but let me tell you what you think, and then you can tell me if this is clear here. Okay, is that I think there is there would be a default assumption that that if we just acknowledge God as the creator, let's say we said Borei HaKol, so I think there's like this feeling that God created stuff, and then like it's all there for the taking. Like I could just like scoop it up, you know. So that would mean that we are the acquirers, and it would put God in terms of like the source of the physical existence, but then like I am the real owner because it was all just heftier until I came along, you know. And that's kind of like, let's say like in the way that Western society, treats the natural world in general is like it's all just natural resources and like we are the owners. But what we do is we frame God in transactional terms vis-a-vis his creation to make it clear that we have to have a transaction from God. He has to transfer ownership to us. So in other words, the emphasis here is that really what we're trying to get at, like the destination here is to get the idea that God gives us ownership over stuff, but the ownership belongs to him. Whereas if we just said God created stuff, we wouldn't associate the idea of ownership with God, and we would feel like we have an intrinsic claim to it, like we are the real owners. So let me write it out and then tell me if this is clear, is that if we just described Hashem as Borei HaKol, Oseh HaKol, Yotzer HaKol, we'd feel like he is the source of everything as the creator, okay? But we are the real owners, because ownership starts with us, okay? So to combat this, and to remind us that ownership is only granted to us from him, we speak about Hashem in ownership / transactional terms. And this forces us to recognize that God grants us ownership. And if you notice, I'm getting this from the fact that he says, how is he interpreting Konei HaKol? Knuya are acquired. So the emphasis is really on us being the ones that God transferred ownership to. But in order to have an idea of God transferring ownership, you need to have a way of talking about him as though he owns stuff. Yeah, Esty?
First of all, I think this is an amazing idea. Can you expand a little bit on what the false havamina would be that people would have?
Good question. It's the false havamina people would have.
I mean, I kind of get it, sort of like possession is 9/10 of law, like we're in the world, it feels like ours. Is that just like a baseline thing?
Yeah, I could just go to your favorite line here. What is the Hava Amina? Is that the Hava Amina is this is an Olam Shali, right? Kamash Malan, it's an Olam She'ena Shalach. Yeah,
right,
but
okay.
I still think we should think about it though, right? But I think that is the answer, right?
Right. It's just like
I do want to talk about like let's say, okay, again, I'm not trying to like romanticize Native Americans, but like they have this idea that, like, but by and large, that like we exist in harmony with the earth, and we are custodians of it. To borrow our phrase, of da ulashamra, that God places in the garden to work it and to protect it. Okay, but the Western, I'm just calling the Western European, whatever you want to call it, mind is, it's ours for the taking, for the pillage and for the taking. Like there's no notion that this was given to us for a reason. It's just, no, it's here and I could just take it. Yes, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's fine to ask though, but I mean, wouldn't this phrase need to extend to all of humanity, not just, Western? Like there must be something in the way people think that we're, like not just, I mean, am I making a mistake? I have an assumption that what's in the tefillah would be for all.
Yeah, no, it is.
Societies.
It is, but I mean, I'm not saying like when we say for all societies, we mean like normal human nature. Like
normal nature, right?
Yeah, or at least in the humanity that the Torah was given to. I don't know. In others, I don't know if we need to say.
Are you not including Native Americans like in that?
Maybe not. I have no idea. Like if the Torah,
okay.
If the Torah were given to Native Americans, maybe we wouldn't need to use this. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think we need to go deep into the human psyche and posit that.
Yeah, me neither. I just felt like there was like a general like outlook that people just by being driven by internal drives that want us to flourish, whatever the society or culture may be. I mean, unless something weird happens, which definitely can happen.
Yeah.
That there would be some sense of like looking around in the world that you're in and figuring out what can you use to help you in whatever way you're relating to it. And you have to just like stop before that and recognize before you embark on that interaction with the world around you, it's not yours.
Right. Yeah. Rather than the more integrated, Bria-oriented mindset. Yeah. Okay, Nava?
Yeah, so I think I understand the idea that it's kind of to counter the notion that like we have the possession when we don't. But I guess I'm still lost on how the word acquire specifically kind of conveys that message. Like I can't think of a better word to use, but
so the only this is what I don't really like about this, which is that the better word would be like adon hakol, like which would refer to ownership, not acquisition. There is a Rambam later on that that I put here as a backup. I'm gonna attempt to like dart in and steal a point from the Rambam without getting bogged down in this. So the Rambam in the More Nevuchim 230 goes through 4 terms that are used to describe God's relationship to the heavens, which are bara, asa, kana, and kel. Okay, and he gives a bunch of psukim to explain why. And at one point he says, but of the existence of the world as a whole, heaven and earth, the term used is bara, is created. For this, according to our opinion, means bringing into existence from nothing. And it also says asa, made, in reference to giving things their specific forms, that is, their natures. And it says about them kana, since he rules over them like a master's rulership over his servants. That is why he is called Adon. Is this Adon Kol Haaretz? Yeah, Adon Kol Haaretz, Lord over all the earth, and Adon, and the Lord. Ach kivin she'ein Adon ela im yesh lo kinyan, but since there is no Lord without a possession, v'zeh mata es hadas lahamana b'kadmus chomer mesuyam, and that could lead someone to believe in the existence of some primordial eternal matter. The Torah instead uses the term created or made. Okay, so again, I'm darting in trying to get this one point here, is that to me, the better term for, if you're just trying to describe God as the owner, which would still allow us to say that we were granted this from the owner of everything. The Rambam is saying that there is a risk of using the word Adon because Adon is a relational term. So in other words, just like, for example, you can't call someone a parent unless they have a child, and you can't call someone a child unless they have a parent. So too, you can't call someone an Adon unless they have a possession that they're an Adon over. And the Rambam is saying that would have this negative implication of implying that something of the universe existed eternally alongside God. So that's why it uses the term bara and asa, which implies creation out of nothing. So I'm trying to say that if you're trying to evoke the notion of ownership without Adon, your best bet is Kana, because it's speaking of God in transactional terms. And that's really what we want you to think of yourself in. You are not the intrinsic owner of the thing. Sorry, you're not. It's not this thing is intrinsically yours, but it was the result of you from another owner giving it to you, and you can't call God an owner. You have to call him an acquirer. It's a messy interpretation. That's why I'm not so happy with it. Yeah, tomorrow.
But could that?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Esti?
Sorry. On that, but could that be one of the reasons why it would be better to say kol, have kol instead of konei shemayim va'aretz?
Why?
Because then it helps that God creates a part like is the has acquisition of everything. It means that it's not. Oh, I forgot that there was just a phrase you just used. But that it's like because it's everything that it just kind of offsets a little bit the negative terms of acquisition. Kol. There's like nothing in it that exists that isn't konet by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not specific. It's everything.
Right. Okay. So that's actually the answer I was going to give to Hakol in general, which can be applied here, which I'm just going to type out really quickly here, is this is an answer to question 3, and I'll go back to tomorrow, is that, Malki Tzedek, this is my theory, okay? Malki Tzedek, said Shemayim va'aretz. Is this question 3? No. This is question 4 about why Hakol. So Malki Tzedek said Shemayim va'aretz because evidently that was how he conceived of the universe. Okay, but we hold that not everything is confined to the physical universe. Okay, there's also malachim, the soul, olam haba, right, etc. So we switch to Hakol because that implies everything, not just the physical universe. And then Esti is also, now just to say this here, is that this is Esti's point. This possibly explains why, this possibly helps us, helps drive home the point of God being the absolute owner, which wouldn't be as pronounced if we just said Shemayim va'aretz. Yeah, Tamar?
I think I didn't understand the point that you were taking from the Rambam. And specifically, like, how does Konei resolve the problem with Adon? Isn't it the same problem?
So the other thing is that, so just to be clear here, Rambam is not saying that. I'm saying that. Rambam is saying that Bara and Asa solve the problem of implying. So in other words, like this, he says like this: really created means to bring out of something out of nothing. Okay, so that's definitely appropriate. Kana has the added element of a master ruling over stuff. Okay, and the Rambam says that's also why Adon is good, but Adon opens up the risk of thinking that there is pre-existing matter. So then the Rambam says that's why going back to bara is preferable. But what I'm trying to say is, well, what about kana? And so I'm saying that kana, like, in other words, in this Rambam, there's an implication that kana has an advantage over bara, which is this idea of mastery. And the full expression of the idea of mastery would be in Adon, but that goes too far because it opens us up to this other problem. But now I'm like, well, Rambam, what about like, so then what, does kana imply mastery? Like, to me, that seems to work, so I'm trying to extract this from like reading between the lines of the Rambam, but I don't know if the Rambam would agree with me. And I also did that kana has the additional problem of implying that God got it from somewhere, which is, to me, more problematic than saying that there's a pre-existing matter.
Right. I feel like this should also imply pre-existing matter and maybe more.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I really, I don't know. This is also why, like, just to stress this, I put this Rambam here in case we needed to try to draw from it. I don't understand this Rambam enough to teach it. So that's why I'm
Okay, yeah, this is a helpful clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. SD? Or Naomi? Unless that's a hand up from before. Okay.
Sorry, I think it's before.
Sure. Okay. All right. So let's do the next interpretation now. Sforno. Okay. So this is Sforno right on the psukim of Malki Tzedek. Konei Shemayim v'Haaretz, Hashemayim v'Haaretz heim kinyan lo, lasos behem kiritzono. So the heavens and the earth are his possession that he can do with it what he wants. Ki eno lahem siba tivis, because God is not their natural cause. Okay, this is an Aristotelian, okamosha chashvu, k'tzas bali hamechkar, like some philosophers thought. Okay, so what he means by that is that fire by nature has to heat or has to burn, it can't control it. And so some philosophers thought that the universe was a natural product of God's existence, like Aristotle. But we hold, avalhu poel rotzoni, we hold that God is a volitional agent, that he brought the universe into existence out of will, upol behem kirtzon, and therefore he can do what he wants. So this is the idea that I believe Esti said last time, okay? Which is, and I'm going to put this in my own terms, or in Esti's terms as well, but not the Sforno's terms. Hold on. Oh, actually, no, we'll put it in Sforno's terms first. Okay, so this is Sforno's answer to question 1, which is that kone means that the universe you start off with saying belongs to God? Yeah, belongs to God, and he can do with it whatever he wants. And he did not, it did not result from him, and it did not result from him naturally, but by an act of will. Okay, so the question is, what does this have to do with ownership? So that is what we explained last time, which is that, like, legally, to own something means that you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, and when I taught this to my students, I tried to exhaust all the examples. Let's see if I can get all of them. You can use it, sell it, gift it, make it hefker, destroy it, bequeath it, sanctify it, prohibit it, bop it. Yeah. Okay. So you can do whatever you want with it. So this is a good mashal for Hashem being the one who determines how, the role and function of everything in the universe. So that is the idea of ownership according to Sforno. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, next is I just realized maybe a good way to alternative loose translation of Rabbeinu Bachya's idea of Konei Shemayim V'Haaretz, Konei HaKol, is the original owner of everything. And that would imply the notion that, like, I am a secondary owner, but the original owner, the ownership originated with Hashem. Yeah. Okay, last answer that we're going to do for today is the Abravanel, and this is kind of what the Rambam already talked about. So this is in his long commentary on Malki Tzedek's statement, which I did not copy and paste here in full because I didn't want to get dragged down to the other points he makes. Since Malki Tzedek knew that Abraham affirmed the existence of the first cause, so I guess Avram's reputation had already spread. Sholet be'elyonim, who rules over the upper realms, the chidush ha'olam, and that Avram also believes in the chidush olam, the creation of the universe, briaso, and its creation out of nothing. L'chein bercho be'osam hapinos atzman. Therefore, Malki Tzedek blessed him with these same fundamental principles. Ba'amro, saying Baruch Avram l'kel elyon, blesses Avram to kel elyon. Rotzalomar means to say elyon al hashemayim ushmei hashemayim, exalted above the heavens and the heavenly heavens. V'konei shemayim v'aretz, and possessor of the heavens and earth. Hu pinas hachidush. This is referring to the principle of creation anew. Sha'asa kinyan u'metzios me'hashemayim v'haaretz ki yotziim hold on. I don't know if that's a typo. Hotzium, I think it's Vehikne. I don't know if this is a typo here. Whatever, I'm just going to highlight this and check it out later. Okay, so in simple terms here, what is he saying? So he's saying the same thing as the Rambam, but hold on. This is the Abravanel's answer to question 1, which is Kone refers to the fact that God created the universe yesh me'ayin, ex nihilo. Okay, so then the question is, how does Kone imply creation yesh me'ayin, which the Abravanel does not explain. So how would you, how does Kone, or what does this have to do with ownership? That's the question. Yeah, Tamar?
I had this funny idea, which I might just be kind of shoehorning in here.
Yeah.
But we read the phrase Kone Hakol, and then we were talking about what does this mean? And then we listed all the ways that God isn't really an acquirer in the way that we think about it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good prompt, for Yesh Me'ayin, what are the options? Acquiring something that already existed or not? I'm not sure, because it's kind of saying the opposite of what it should say. But maybe there's some way that is a good teaching.
Yeah,
thing.
I also, this is the problem I keep running into, is that I feel like if bara is the word that means creation yesh me'ayin, so then just say that, we can come up with circuitous routes to get from kana to yesh me'ayin, but it feels like needlessly complicated. So I feel like my reservations about what I'm going to say are similar to your reservations about what you're going to say. So I'll tell you what I'm thinking here, which is, and I've seen the Rav talk about this idea, which is that there's an intuitive idea that if you create something, then you own it. Okay. And this is reflected in halacha, and I'm not gonna get into the halacha weeds here, but this is reflected in halacha in cases where you stole or acquired something and then modify it, and halacha discusses the stake of ownership you have because you created something new in the object. Okay, so if this is true for our creation, which is yesh me'yesh, then kal v'chomer for yesh me'ayin. So in other words, it's like a backwards way to allude to the fact that God created everything, saying that God owns this thing and acquired it. So how does he do that? Well, the only way you can absolutely own and acquire something is if you are the absolute source of it. Again, my reservation here, I'll just say my reservation is, why not just say borei hakol, which implies yesh me'ayin, which implies yesh me'ayin directly in the word itself, without the need for this this awkward mushal. And I really just don't have an answer to that question. So this is also why I like Sforno's idea, because Sforno's idea is basically saying that think of yourself acquiring something. So when I get it, it means that I can do whatever I want with it. Well, God acquires the universe. So yeah, ignoring the part about who he acquired it from, the notion that God is the acquirer means that he can do whatever he wants with it. And maybe the focus on the act of acquisition is talking about the act of creation, which was volitional and not natural. Yeah, Esty?
I don't know if this is too meta, but could you say something the fact is, these aren't just abstract ideas. We're saying them in the context of tefilah, and we're saying them in the context of introducing our bakashot.
Yeah.
So maybe our focus on the fact that specifically the things that we want, like it's steering us away from our own, not so much the aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the one who owns everything, but it's all to help us get into the proper mindset of who we're talking to help us with our bakashot.
Yeah. So how then does that, or what does that help? Like, I like the idea, but what does that help?
Like, instead of saying Borei HaKol, it's specifically honing in on the aspect of it, of we want things. That's where that's our we're starting from.
Right.
We want things to go a certain way. We want things to happen. We want, events and material things. Like we want to be moving all the pieces, but we don't, and we're acknowledging in the context of what we want, like a denial of our own power to do it, and that it is in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hands instead.
Yeah, I think that's what I do like about Bekius' version, because this is speaking directly to our feeling of I'm the Konei HaKol, and this is saying no, God is the Konei HaKol, and is it slightly less accurate that you describe God as a Konei? Yes, it is. But if your primary thing is to address your relationship with material goods, so then it's worth like using that inaccuracy to combat the way that we think about things.
Right, but I'm saying, and also helping us get into the proper mindset when we're making our bakasha.
Right. Yeah, meaning I'm talking about the sur me'ra aspect, and you're talking about the asay tov. Meaning, you need to clear away the idea of yourself as an owner, but then you can get the idea of asking for stuff from Hashem. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let's just quickly summarize this. Oh, sorry, did we answer the other questions? Okay, no. So we 3 answers to Konei HaKol. How does this fit into the flow of the bracha? So I actually want to hold that question at bay until we see what happens after this, okay? Because that's what a flow is: before, middle, after, okay? What do we make of the fact that this is an appropriated name from Melchizedek? Do we have an answer for that question? And maybe you can say that we don't need to answer that question. Yeah, see?
I think I'm on the same track again. To the extent that a person might be in a framework where they're one second, I actually going to take a second to think, because I had a better formulation earlier and I didn't want to say it too soon. I'm going to remember what I was thinking.
I'm just going to write a summary of the takeaway here. So creator, literally, acquire of all. So we have 3 ideas. We have Rabbeinu Bachya. What happened here? We have Rabbeinu Bachya Ibn Pakuda. Yeah. I see. Yeah, I'm gonna go for you first before I type.
I remembered. Yeah, I remembered. I was thinking a little bit like in the way of like Az Yashir, like the Klal had felt like the Mitzrayim had the strength, and then they really like recognized that it came from Hashem. Yeah. That Melchizedek was like steering people, like people are looking for a source of power, and he was recognizing Hashem was over all powers, and Abraham, corrected him, Hashem is the only power. But to the extent that we're grappling and we're trying to find, this is like the ultimate destination of what a person would recognize. Okay,
that's a good idea. So let me see if I can get this. Melchizedek had a partial recognition of Hashem, that Hashem is the greatest power, which is a development on the default intuition that humans have, that we live in a world of competing powers. Okay, and Abraham brought Melchizedek's intuition to the full state of recognizing, this is not an articulate summary, a recognition that Hashem is the only power. And then so in a way, Melchizedek's intermediate state of grappling with coming to this realization is what it like mirrors the process that we are doing when we daven. Does that capture what you're saying, or am I missing something?
Yes.
Okay, nice. All right, good. All right, that's a satisfactory answer. And again, I don't even know if we need to ask the question. Like we Shema Hamas Mishamro, like whoever says a good phrase, then we use it. But it did strike me that this comes from a non-Jew. Okay, so summary. Rabbi Bakim Pekuda says that we speak of Hashem in ownership terms to reinforce the idea that he is the original owner and our possessions are acquired from him on his terms. Then we've got Sforno who says that that ownership means the right to do whatever you want with the owned object. And since Hashem created the universe out of volition, he can dictate the uses of all things. And then the Abravanel says that just as a craftsman, or we're interpreting Abravanel this way, just as a craftsman has an inherent ownership claim over what he creates, so too Hashem, who created the universe out of nothing. Sorry, we call Hashem the owner in acknowledgement that he created the universe out of nothing. Okay. So that's the summary of the three ideas I got. This is the hardest phrase in all of the Shemona Esrei for me, by the way. So if anyone ever finds any better explanations of this, then let me know. But like, I was so shocked to see how few Mefarshim give explanations of this and what the mashal is. So that's what we got for today. So next time, the goal will be to analyze, where are we? Yeah, V'zocher chasdei Avos, u'mevi goel v'nehem l'man shemo bi'ava. Okay, which will be we're going to tackle that whole phrase as one, because the way I understand it, they all go together. Okay, thank you for coming. Next week should be good, and have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Yeah.
See you.